Do we know some other folks are showing up?
I know that Taylor will be coming, and then that's on, so.
Okay. So, if it's okay with everybody, we'll kick off. Can we do that? So, Ned cannot join us today due to a work commitment, so you're stuck with yours truly. So be kind, I've never done this before. And we'll kind of move on. So we have a light agenda, but we actually have an agenda which I hope we'll have a lot of engagement. The way I look at this agenda is basically we're gonna have three separate roundtables on it. I'm trying to make up a little bit of time here to see if we get some more folks come in. But do we have anybody from the public? I think Alice or
Alex and then Margaret is on that now.
Okay, well, Margaret's a member. So we're gonna go on to comments from the public. So if there's any public out there that would like to make a comment, now is your opportunity to do that. Okay, hearing none. The third item on our agenda is the consent agenda from the January 25th, and it's the draft minutes. I'm assuming everybody had an opportunity to read them. Any edits, comments, additions, subtractions? Or if none, let's entertain. There you go, there's a motion already from Greg. A second from Colette. All in favor, just raise their hand and say aye. Aye. All right, well, look at that.
Do we have to bless the votes?
Do we have to bless the votes?
The remotes.
Allow.
So yeah, you take a vote to
See?
allow Margaret to participate.
Yeah, so you should have told me.
Sorry.
So we gotta do that.
Yes.
So do we have a formal motion for that or something? Is there
So
like a written?
No.
Can we just do a formal motion?
Yes, so moved.
We've got a motion from Greg. You want a second too?
Second.
No? Second from
We'll
Colette.
let Margaret to participate.
Yes.
We'll let Margaret participate. Wake up, Margaret.
I'm here. The only reason I'm here is because I'm worried about being assigned something if I wasn't here.
That's my line. You can't steal it. Margaret.
Yeah, I already did. Done.
But by the way, it was great to see you when we did the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. It was great seeing you guys. Thank you for coming. It was wonderful.
We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. That was actually a really great engagement and conversation. All righty. Am I now back on track where I'm supposed to be?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So item number 4 is the update of the bylaws. Everybody should have gotten a handout. I'm hoping everybody read them.
Looks great.
Oh, there's a active there.
So moved.
So we've got
Are you ready to get out of here on a roll?
we've got
Get into the meat of the matter.
We've got a motion from Greg to accept the updated bylaws. Second from Colette. I'm just gonna keep this rolling. I'm gonna play chairman for a moment and go, is there any discussion before we vote? Does anybody have any thoughts or comments or discussion before we move to a vote?
No, that's what we discussed last time.
Okay, everybody good? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right.
So these updated bylaws will bring them to the meeting in March
Yes.
yeah, just to remind the board, yeah.
Starting to think Greg does not have faith in my ability to chair this.
No, we get some stuff
It's
to do.
it's just a joke. All righty. So number 5, which actually was initiated by Greg, was to start doing a little bit of brainstorming about who should be joining our body on that end of it. And this might be a good opportunity to share in that we've actually signed on a consultant.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to share that we officially have selected so the way it works is you need to sort of work with a consultant prior to submission to a Virginia Housing grant application. And today we had a meeting with us, Virginia Housing, and then Amy Niesenson, who is a consultant, one of the VHDA approved consultants, who will be conducting our formal membership review and fee structure review. And so we worked it out with Virginia Housing that our proposal meets the requirements for a successful grant application. So I will be submitting that application, hopefully next week, and we'll start in earnest with Amy. I mean, hopefully, by mid or end of March, to do this sort of full formalized external review of the body's composition and fee structure and bylaws as well.
So in that conversation, did you guys talk about the fact that we're independently waiting to talk to folks, or was there a discussion about us timing that out?
That's something that we'll have to talk to Amy once we're under contract there, because we still need to once the application is approved, then we know we'll have the money to reimburse her. But that'll be part of the conversation for sure.
Do we know her?
Do we know? So I don't think we've worked with her in the past. What we thought was really impressive about her proposal is that she has extensive experience working with housing organizations.
Really?
Say that again?
Originally?
Yeah, so Partnerships for Housing Affordability, which is a PHA, not our PHA, but it's based in Richmond. She did a strategic plan and board development work for them. And her list of activities and organizations she worked with was really extensive and seemed to be very similar to sort of what we aspire to be, at least in our view from staff. So she definitely has really a lot of experience working on this type of task. We felt really.
Or not, our neighbor?
Not as, no, I don't, I'd have to look at that.
Well, we can't have it all.
But to stay on task and what we're going to talk about in membership review, the question I'm asking the body is, do we want to have this discussion now, continue it now? Or do we want to wait, since we've now engaged or about to engage the consultant, wait for the next executive session to do that? I'm prepared to talk about it now.
I think it's worth.
Okay, got it.
Can you spell her last name?
Nisenson.
So Greg, since you've kind of initiated this conversation at the last meeting, where would you like to start this topic? Do you have some folks in mind or some areas that we're missing?
Well, we have a vacancy or two, which is an interesting place to start. And one may have been so for a year, if it's Chris Henry having left, created it, right?
But was Chris Henry an alternate, or was he?
No, he was in.
He was a primary?
And I don't know when he left.
So
I should have known that there was a vacancy and we should have fixed this probably a year ago.
Well, he's been in Spain for about a year. And
Yeah.
I believe he's there a little bit more the last text I had to. So just so I can follow conversation, I've been having conversations with Stanley Martin Homes, and they're interested, they're a new sponsor for the event, and they're interested in joining this body. And one of the reasons I'm excited about that potential ability is they're one of the few folks in the private sector that kind of does both. They build and they develop. Most developers just develop, most builders just build. So that doesn't mean it's exclusive, but there's very few in our area. I think Southern Development might be the other one that does both on that end of it. So they've donated $3,000 to the event, and we'll have 3 members. Excuse me?
Pinnacle also does.
Good, so Pinnacle would be another, I think anything to build the 4 pillars is always good. So they're interested, just to kick the conversation off, they're interested.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think just to kind of work through what we want to do today, like Greg pointed out, we have two vacancies of already designated seats. So we have this developer vacancy and then a health district vacancy, one of which is a little less in our hands, considering we don't necessarily know who at the health district would be interested in serving, or so that's one thing. But I think we definitely have a conversation about who we want to ask to be the developer representative in the current iteration of the board. And then I think it would also be worth asking about, or discussing at least the process that we had talked about or touched on last time about how chair and staff wants to engage with current board members, what that process looks like. And then do we want to, maybe after having that conversation, we can think about, do we want to wait to have sort of the third step of this, which is a brainstorm about new seats, until we have that conversation with current board members, or do you want to do that now? So I feel like,
Well, my vision
Well,
of
it
this,
bothers me that we've had a vacancy for a whole year. So I think that may be a separate issue from new members, given that I think that should be an easy one to fill. So you want to treat that separately?
so this had no structure, this conversation, it's just, it's more like a roundtable discussion, and my only concern was that I don't want to do too much work at this level, and then our consultant come in.
No, I get that.
But just to back to your point, I mean, I know Stanley Martin will be willing to fill that developer slot, but you mentioned Pinnacle, and maybe they both should be on, and the reason I'm saying that is Pinnacle deals with multifamily products.
Exactly.
Stanley Martin
Two
does
separate
does
segments.
not.
Right.
So I think, you know, if we're trying to fill the slot and we can fill it, I think we have the leeway right now to pretty much do whatever we want as an executive committee, or are we restrained by who we can bring in?
I don't think so.
I would agree with that. So that could
William
be,
has been a sponsor of the other summits as well. Participated in the other summits.
Can I ask a
Have-
question?
Yes.
Oh, isn't there like a builders group in the Piedmont area? That kind of represents a lot of different builders?
That's a different slot than this bill. We have a member of that.
Okay,
That's builders. We're now talking about developers.
okay, sorry, okay.
So we have
Right
two.
again.
different
I'm really not
slots.
here, okay.
No, it's all right. But yes, we do have that one covered, Blue Ridge Building.
Blue Ridge Builders.
Yeah.
And Greg, are you our design professional representative? Is that your?
Yes.
Okay.
so Christopher Brennett is the one that's filling the Blue Ridge home, at least he was at that point, he's still on.
Which is a separate category.
But to stay on the developer component, if we have the authority and the ability to do this, I would propose that we reach out to both Pinnacle and Stanley Martin to see if they both wish to come on. Does anybody have any objections to that? Am I crossing
Would
some?
that be two separate appointments, or one as a voting member and one as an alternate? Because we would have to create a new seat if we wanted to ask both to join.
I don't know if, I know this much, that Stanley Martin Homes thinks very differently because they're developing single-family attached and detached. Pinnacle thinks very differently and brings a different set of skills because they are doing multifamily units. I just somehow or another, both at the table would be
Right.
very good. How we get there,
And we don't have a position on the board open for two, is his point, at the moment.
yeah.
In terms of expansion, I think, you know, both would be useful. But to fill the Chris Henry vacancy, multifamily.
So you're thinking Pinnacle?
Well, that was my thought, the minute I saw the vacancy, and, you know, I should have inquired when Chris left. Because I would have suggested, and I haven't talked to William, he's a very busy guy. It's not an executive board commitment, but he was, you know, as I say, very active in both other summits, and I think, including as a sponsor, by the way, I believe.
So my suggestion at the moment is we probably want to note this stuff down. I don't think we're gonna take action at the moment to fill that slot.
Well, I think we should just internally decide to fill it, fill the one slot. And when it comes time to expand, I think the idea of having both a multifamily and a single family developer would be a good thing for expansion, because
I would agree.
I think the private sector, the more private sector involvement, maybe the more sponsorship opportunities we'll have in the future.
Okay, so what we're saying is Pinnacle, just to be clear, we're saying we're going to ask Pinnacle to fill the vacant Chris Henry slot, which was the multifamily slot.
Well, Chris happened to be multifamily. I helped set that up at the time, and that's my world more than the single family, so, you know, I leaned towards that direction
Well, he
at
also,
the time.
he also brought commercial to the table too.
Yes,
Well, it's the will of the body, so if that's something.
I would suggest that we approach William Park to fill that slot. And if he's not interested, then I don't, then we could go to your other connection. And I think when we talk expansion later, I think the idea of having a single-family development company and a multifamily development company from the private sector might be an interesting way to expand the board.
I agree with that.
So just for, we're interested in bringing on a consultant for membership to review membership as a whole, correct? Or am I-
Yes, that's correct.
So it may not technically be an expansion, I'm just putting it out, because I mean, that they may come back and be like, well, you should probably keep it to this number of people as a potential outcome, in which case, or they might even say, I don't know, I'm just thinking, I don't disagree with moving forward with doing a replacement right now. I'm also kind of, I guess I'm just curious, what do we do when we get this information back from a consultant? When we already have a membership body?
Then I think the
Do
board
we-
moves to expand the number of defined roles that would constitute the board by proposing that we expand the board. At least that's the direction I think we're heading.
Well, I think the consultant's gonna help us with that.
Yeah.
Right, but is that the point you're trying to make, Anthony?
The point I'm trying to make is, I guess, just a little bit of clarity of direction with making an appointment now and asking for consulting advice about who should be on the board, both at the same time, if that makes sense.
As
I don't
one,
really have a problem with it, I guess I just wanted to voice it because I'm just curious what other board members think about the kind of order of events and what we would like to. Yeah, or we don't want to make, I don't know, it's not like we would make a promise that we would have to take back, but it's just.
No, we give
do
an open position for a defined role that's already a defined role on the defined board.
Right, but then you
So that the consultant will look at the defined roles and see if there are other categories of groups that might expand the defined roles, which will then require an amendment to our bylaws.
so we're having two conversations.
Yeah.
Greg wants to fill vacant slots, which I agree with. Anthony's talking about adding on to it as somebody who,
Well, sorry.
if you don't mind, as somebody who does some consulting work as income stream, I don't want to hamstring our consultant by making decisions now that person needs to chew on into her thinking, right? So I think filling the slot, a vacant slot is absolutely prudent. We probably should have done it a long time ago.
There we go.
So I think that's one conversation. The other conversation, I really think we should wait until the consultant is fully engaged and then gets back with us, is my opinion for what it's worth. So that being said,
I agree with both things you just said.
really,
Yeah.
meeting is adjourned.
So that sounds good.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just throwing it out there that it seems like it was agreed upon with us that that we're thinking about an expansion, which might be the right move. I didn't realize that was.
I suppose the consultant could come back to us and tell us, your board is way too big, and you want to slow it down.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
Like, if that's the case, then we need to be strategic about,
Yeah.
which I know we're doing, that's all.
Cole had said way better than I did. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, the only, just from our conversations with Amy and what we included in our RFP, the only situation I find that, I feel like that would be a matter of consolidation of positions, which I have a feeling this board would not necessarily be into. So for example, and this is just hypothetical, but you could say, oh, well, we would be able to consolidate developer, builder, and design professional into a private sector position. And I think the idea is that we think that specialization is necessary and worthwhile. So while it is possible, I guess the point is, while it is possible, I'd be very surprised if this led to a downsizing of the board.
The other thing that's going on, based on our roundtables we were doing, I was at a business function last Okay, guys, we took a bit of a timeout there, so we are back. So we're gonna stitch the two recordings together, is that the game plan?
Does anybody have the ability to contact Margaret to tell her a lot about
I
it?
can send
So we were in the middle of discussing membership review, brainstorming. I think where we settled on it was two different conversations. One is to fill the current vacancies and some suggestions from that, and the other, as far as growing the body, we were gonna defer to the consultant to see what information they're gonna bring back to us, hopefully in short order on that. Is that kind of an assessment, reassessment of where we were before we got disconnected? Everybody agree? Okay, great. So, Ian, I know you're busily texting over there to Margaret. Do we need, if Greg wishes to bring Pinnacle up before, do we need to do a motion in a second?
say yes, what do you think, Christine? A motion to appoint?
So Christine, to bring you up to speed, don't know if you were paying attention, we have some vacancies. So Greg made a proposal to see if Pinnacle was interested in doing that, but you have not had the conversation with them.
Definitely.
Yeah. I would be reluctant to do a motion in a second if we have not already had the conversation.
Yes.
So I think we should be on consensus agreement to ask Greg to reach out to William Park to see if Pinnacle is interested, and then we can do it at our next meeting. Is that acceptable?
We usually bring it to the commission as well. I'm ready for appointments, Christine. I know we did some of the other replacement RHP members, we had the commission formally approve that appointment.
If they are TJPDC appointed positions. Is the one that you're talking about a TJPDC appointed position?
Yes, it is.
Then yes, it goes before the commission.
It is.
TJPDC appointed developer representative.
They're all TJPDC appointed.
Some of them are county or localities, so like Albemarle or, yeah. So yes, it would go before and I can follow up with you, Greg, about that.
So we're in consensus for William Park, Pinnacle, through the commission to see if they're interested. You're gonna ask first, report back to Ian, and then it's gonna be presented to the commission for its decision to be made, and then it comes back to us. Is that a fair structure?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there, while you're on the subject, is there any other vacancies we're missing that we need to talk about?
The other one is the health district.
Yeah, they have experienced some staff turnover, and I was connected. Rebecca Schmidt was briefly, Dr. Bond's replacement, and then she also left the health district. So I'd be happy to reach back out to them. I reached out to them a few times after Rebecca left, but I hadn't heard anything back, so I'd be happy to follow up with them. And but I mean, this might be something that if we're looking to rearrange or like, unless you want this, if you really want this position filled sort of at the moment, I'd be happy to re-engage with the Blue Ridge Health District, but if this is.
Yeah, my personal opinion, if we have a vacancy, we should have been and should be
Okay.
actively seeking replacement.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
We do not have both of those representations at the table.
Okay.
Anthony, you were the one that proposed bringing health in here in the first place, and you work with them, I assume. We don't need the executive director of the health district necessarily to be the representative. In fact, something I'm going to comment when we get the consultant on board is we name CEOs and so on of these various not-for-profits, and we don't get a lot of attendance. And so, I'm thinking we should encourage, consideration of other members within some of the organization to see if we get more attendance. But if you know of a name over there that we might consider, other than the vacant executive director role, I think, because when the new executive director comes on board, this is not going to be higher on the priority list, bless her heart, or his heart, whichever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rebecca used to be on our board at BRAC and suggested Cameron Moore, who's been fantastic.
Oh, yeah,
Cameron Moore.
that'd be great.
I mean, I can reach out to Cameron to see if he has any other contacts or other interests, but yeah, absolutely.
So as it relates to the two vacancies, just so I'm clear, Greg's gonna reach out to Pinnacle, Anthony's gonna reach out, I apologize, I didn't hear the name.
Cameron Moore.
I reach out to Cameron Moore to see if she's interested in joining, and then everybody's gonna report back to Ian, then it'll go to the commission, and then it comes back to us.
Okay.
And you can just CC me in that if you want to, or once you've had those conversations to include me.
So Ian, does this cover what you wanted to talk
Yeah.
about with the membership rate?
Yep.
Does anybody have any other input on it?
I'd say one other thing. These are members. We're a board. Normally you don't have every member be a board member. Maybe part of the discussion is, should this be the board or should there be members? And should there be a board? I'm just throwing that out.
So I think that's a consultant.
Exactly.
That's gonna look at that.
Yeah, and I know that included in the packet today was someone, I just lifted it directly from the framework, the original CDRHP framework, but it's sort of, there's board members, it's advisory members, and then stakeholders, and I don't think we ever really fleshed out what that hierarchy or relationship between those roles looks like, but that's sort of what you're saying maybe is, maybe the expansion of the board means that there are organizations represented in different capacities that aren't just board members, in addition to expanding boards.
I'm personally excited about the consultant because I think we took it to a really good place, but now we need somebody to help us build it, as we said, the last mile to really be impactful. Any other thoughts from anybody else on this topic? Okay, so we're picking up schedule here a little bit. So under new business, we have events update. So we're gonna kind of talk about a couple of things. One is how much money we have, where we're at with members, with paid members, how many we have left. And I want to talk a little bit about expectations from this body at that event, specifically the executive committee and how we can engage others. So Ian, if you do me a favor, can you just go over how we're fixed fiscally, how many seats we have left? If we go over, is there room for more folks?
So, yeah, I guess let me organize my thoughts here. So we are about a month away from the event, which is pretty exciting. So I guess I'll start with logistically.
Then I'll take on the other.
Yeah, I'm gonna be meeting with the Omni and the AV folks in the next few weeks to kind of answer that last question, for example, extra seats, like what their absolute max capacity is. Right now we have it at 180. And I think including board members, presenters, sponsors, and just members of the public. We're at about 155 tickets or seats filled or whatever. So we'll figure that out with them to see if there's a way for us to, sell tickets at the door, because I presume that 180 will be reached pretty soon. But I guess I was talking to you about the budget numbers, if you want to share those.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
other than that, we can talk a little bit more about the night before reception event as well.
That was what I was gonna say.
Yeah, we're in a good place with the presenters, knowing where to go, knowing what they're doing the day of, as well as sponsored materials. We've received all the logos and stuff, so I'm working right now on getting the program finalized. We'll contract, I think it was Bailey, the one on Harris Street, I think was the one that we, Bailey Printing that we did last time. So I guess the bits and bobs are kind of internally we're figuring those out, but big picture, a lot of people have registered and we've raised a good amount of money, so.
So we have enough money to run the events, which is great news, because at one point we thought that might be a bit of a struggle, so thank you to everybody who donated. It looks like we've got about 30 seats left, which I think they're filling up pretty quickly, so if you want, Ian emailed me, texted me the invite, you can get the text and send them out to people in your sphere of influence and see if they can come and fill in that last 30 spots. But as far as expectation goes, we're a team here, so when we go to this event, both of these events, just be prepared to answer questions about the Regional Housing Partnership, kind of be engaged. All of us have attended and been part of events like this. We know how this works, but we are the face of the Regional Housing Partnership, and we need to engage with folks. So Common House is the night before.
Yeah.
To talk a little bit about that, and let's make sure we have everybody that is at the executive committee either signed up or can make.
Yeah, so I sent out, basically this is gonna be like a networking type event. It'll be very casual. We'll have some brief opening remarks from Ned, and from Jay Grant, who's our keynote speaker, but there's no formal program for this. It's just gonna be hors d'oeuvres and a bar, and so we'll be basically meeting with the presenters and the sponsors and talking about the partnership. And I guess I wanted to highlight both of the events. There'll be, so everyone will have like a name tag or lanyard or whatever, but y'all will say, executive committee, and then we'll have one that says board member. So it'll be really easy to identify who the sponsors are if you want to, say thank you, or just like, a lot of the sponsors are, City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, so you'll probably know a lot of the people, but at least also at the networking event will be you'll be identified as a board member. So that'll be, that's a very casual event, and that's something that I know we had in mind for the 2020 event that obviously it didn't happen, the spring 2020 event, but I think it's just a good opportunity for you all to just break the ice the night before, and so the next morning when we all show up at the Omni, we kind of have developed a little bit of a rapport with some of the people presenting and sponsoring the event. So I don't know, I don't think there's, at least, I think you guys can just show up and be friendly and have fun is what I would say the expectations for that is, but I agree with Keith, what he's saying, that
It's just, we just need to engage with folks in the room, and I'm sure we're capable of doing it. So the sessions, we've got an Airbnb session, we've got a College Town session, we've got a Missing Middle session that I'm going to moderate. We've got a faith organization for affordable housing, the University of Virginia's Affordable Housing Initiative, Preventing Rural Displacement, Housing and Economic Development, Aging in Place, for rural and urban areas, and then alternate forms of housing construction. Did I hit the topics pretty?
Yeah, that one, it's also gonna be it's gonna be about creative financing of affordable housing too, from Virginia Housing.
Got it. So there's a little something for everybody. So, just work the room and we'll do great.
Yeah,
When can we see the agenda?
yeah, it'll be coming out next week, so March 1st.
I want to reach out to my panel and make sure I
Yeah,
give them a time.
yeah, no, Greg, I'll be reaching out or I guess a few of you all, to panelists directly to kind of say, here's when your event is, what time.
So I'm just reading that right off of the e-bike that Ian can send you, the event. This is e-bike, I don't know which, for Eventbrite, Eventbrite, excuse me.
Oh, really?
So,
Register.
Did I miss that?
so in it has what I just read to you. The agenda.
But not time.
Not the
No,
time.
no, no, this is just basic topics and who's who and who the speakers are and so forth and so on.
I want to mention that this is the day after the National Low Income Housing Coalition Annual Conference in Washington. So, like, I'll be sending a board member and a staff, but I'm trying to figure out right now who's going there, because I don't think that they're gonna come back from Washington Thursday night and then spend all day at this event.
Okay.
And there may be other low-income housing organizations that are also trying to rescue with that.
Yeah, and I know that Lord Jean, for me, I know that you shared that we have the scholarship codes available
Yes.
for, yeah, so we.
And
Okay.
I had two people say, yes, we want to go,
Great.
well, definitely, but then they also
They
want to go
will.
to Washington, and so we're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a much more affordable event for us than the 3 days in
Free is
Washington.
good.
Yeah.
which-
Such a deal, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, it's a bargain. I'm working, I'm trying to steer them, but, you know.
But this is also, all the events are recorded correctly?
Yeah.
And so if they can't make it, they'll be
Okay,
able to
yeah,
attend.
but I think we'll have a board member and a staff. I know
Okay.
that's it.
Okay.
That should be.
Any thoughts, comments? You know, we're the executive board, we're gonna go rah-rah team and do well, right?
Yeah, I was gonna mascot suit for you, a big house mascot.
Oh, yeah?
Oh my gosh, please.
I wish we had
Well,
one.
we're not dressing up in costume?
Yes, we are. We're all dressed.
Was that an offer, Ian?
No,
Don't tempt me, I'll do it. All righty, any comments or thoughts on that topic before we move on? Okay, I should get these easy ones on a regular basis. So we've got a roundtable left on the next item, unless, is there anything, Ian, that's on would you like to talk about that's not on the agenda?
Christine, do you have anything? I think we're good.
No, the only thing I was gonna add, Ian, you said there's no agenda for the networking event. Is there at least gonna be a welcome by the chair and perhaps even an introduction of the keynote? Like, are you gonna have like at the very beginning introducing?
Yes, we are gonna have that.
Great, thank you.
Did you get that? I didn't have it.
John, introducing the keynote speaker and Ned starting the.
Ed is gonna welcome and
Yeah.
introduce the
Yeah.
team. Yes, and yes.
Yes, and yes.
Okay, so roundtable. What's happening in your world, Anthony?
Well, I noticed, I think in the minutes I was talking last time about veteran homelessness and our efforts to try to reach a functional end of veteran homelessness. And our goal was to get to 6 by the end of January. We got to 8. Which I think is still very admirable, so we celebrated those successes. I think we're up to 9 again, but you know, it comes and goes down, so we're still focusing on it. We meet every other week with our partners from the VA and other housing service providers. So yeah, that work's still going well. Nothing else too out of the ordinary, still working to help folks transition to housing from Premier Circle in partnership with Patcham. And trying to meet all the reporting deadlines that are coming up for grant reports.
How's the development project coming along for yourself?
I think it's coming good. We should have an update here soon, I think, about it. But yeah.
Good. Any questions for Anthony? Comments? Kim, you're up next.
Hey, I'm Kim Highland, or Human Doesn't Know Me. Personally, I'm the director of the Louisiana Louisa Housing Foundation, and I have people coming from Louisa County. From the county, they're very excited for the regional meeting. Been working on Savannah County.
I think I've got that handled for you a little bit.
Good.
Someone's gonna come, I think Tony's gonna come. Is that what we need to
Tony
do?
Ryan's gonna
Did
Good.
Louisa County contribute?
No, they don't sponsor, like events like this. Is there policy or something?
Yeah, they're going through some budget struggles right now, but I think they'll be able to. They recently became highly engaged in housing. So finally, and I came on in 2020 during COVID. So it was already difficult to engage with like Thomas Jefferson districts, and we're already rural. And the counties the rural counties were a little more lax, don't you think, Keith, with housing? It would be a nice.
I'll take a sip of water at that point.
So Louisa's really stepping up. They're very interested in being more proactive. They are working on donating some acreage to us, and we're going to develop 25 affordable housing units in Louisa County.
Who, where?
Right near the Resource Council, in our offices at the Housing Foundation, Chalk Level and 22.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, and we are working on, looking for land, Keith, by the way, in Fluvanna County to build 8 low-income senior units. So we have a model of 4 senior housing units in Louisa County that were built by Howard Evergreen, you know Howard. And it's a model that works really well for us. So it's a nice model for the rural areas that we're. It is, correct. And it's worked fantastically, so we're looking to replicate, do something similar to that in both counties. 8 units in Fluvanna, 16 in Louisa County, and then the other 9 units in Louisa County will be for what we're calling essential worker housing. Somebody recently in Fluvanna used the term that affordable housing had been weaponized, and I was like, that's probably a good way to put it. So there's, as soon as you come up with another term, that one's gonna be weaponized too, but we keep trying to slip something in there that's a little bit more friendly. So I did talk Wanda Colvin into coming from Louisa County. And I'd like to get more admin staff from Fluvanna as well, because they need to get engaged in grant writing in the rural areas. So I think Louisa's interested in pursuing CDBG. So the rural areas, we don't automatically get CDBG. There's a lot of funds that the more urban areas get that the rural areas have to compete for. But I think they're very usable, and I think they can be utilized well to prevent homelessness. I think we struggle more with how do we actually service homelessness. We have, as difficult as that issue is, we have extra impediments in the rural areas where we don't have services, we don't have medical facilities, we don't have the transportation, we don't have the jobs. So how are we going to handle preventing homelessness? We're trying to keep older folks in their homes longer, so I'm really thrilled with the Aging in Place program that you guys have set up. But these are people who, there's a lot of houses, as you know, keep driving around in Fluvanna, that you would think anybody's living, and if they lived in a condemned building like that in the city, you would call them homeless. We don't call them homeless because they have a house, they own the land. So we're trying to find workarounds with, they own the land, they have all the utilities. We recently got a big well and septic grant, so we can fix that. So let's knock the house down and put up a new smaller house. So we're looking at combining different funds to do that.
People will be surprised how many people in rural counties actually don't have water to the house.
It's shocking. That's how our, the Fluvanna and then the Louisa ones were separate, but they started with trying to get indoor plumbing to people. We still have people, who say they haven't had running water maybe ever, or they haven't had it for 3 months. Yeah. Or they use an outhouse. It's still today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Kim.
Thank you.
Colette, anything to share?
Well, so we're still anticipating the responses on our RFP, which are due March 1st. And from there, we'll evaluate and try to make a selection sometime this summer.
Great.
That's for the 2 sites, the Piedmont site and the 10th and Worland sites.
Any idea on the multiple?
And I don't know where the zoning.
Oh, yeah, so we're waiting on
process.
rezoning the county for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from Colette? Okay. Taylor?
Well, I think what's going on for FAR and for CRHA is that we've started moving residents into new units that were built at South First Street, and are waiting in April. We're supposed to be moving residents, all the Crescent Halls residents, back into that building. And what we're running into is a whole learning curve on getting that last stage of, okay, the unit is there, you're moving in, but there are little things that aren't quite right, and there are brand new computerized appliances and thermostats that nobody knows how to use, none of us do either. And so, getting training, getting a lot of people trained on helping residents, and a lot of the residents are elderly, but also there are things that aren't, somebody has a dishwasher for the first time and they run it and the water goes all over the floor. And is it because they didn't do it right, or is it the latch on the door isn't set right? And so we've just run into we're doing this, I feel like this is our test. The South First Street is the test on this, and, because it's not that many units, but when Crescent Halls comes up, and then there's other buildings in South First Street, and in the next few years, every unit that the Housing Authority has will either have been rebuilt or renovated and have new appliances and lots of work. And so I think we're sort of having to step back and build out what the supports are for that transition. And, I think I've been pushing that when the last step, rather than, building is completed, has to be that resident is settled in the space, and that we start to think about that as part of the development process, because there's a lot to it. So that's, I think, but it's also really exciting. I mean, the units are really nice, and people are, on the whole, really thrilled to be in new spaces. And I think that it's a very ambitious couple of years coming up in terms of South First Street, South Sixth Street, and Crescent Halls, all being new construction, basically, really fully rebuilt, and then significant modifications to West Haven and Riverview and the Nishi and Madison, all the other properties that are within CRHA, and they're all kind of, it's remarkable. It's really exciting how much change there's going to be, how much upgrade there's going to be in terms of quality of life. And so that's what I have to report. We're also still looking for a executive director for FAR. So if you know of anyone who might be interested, I think that it's going to be, it's kind of a really positive time for public housing residents in Charlottesville. And the challenges are different than they were a few years ago. I think that the leadership at CRHA is very resident focused, which is not something that's always been the case. And so resident-led redevelopment and resident representation is not a hard battle. So I think looking at what the next steps would be for improving the quality of life of Charlottesville's public housing residents is kind of the place where the vision of the new director is going to have a chance to really have an impact.
Well, good luck with the hiring.
Thank
It's a
you.
struggle across the board.
Oh, man, it's amazing, yeah.
It's the same problem in the for-profit and nonprofit, and
It's,
I'm sure at the university, it's the pool of folks to hire is rather thin.
yes,
At this
yeah,
point.
I'm putting out new ads at this point because we're just not.
Well, I would encourage you to get a headhunter. It might cost a little bit of money, but
Yeah, I've talked to the board about that. They're not, so far, they're like, no, we can't do that. But I've been able to get a significant increase in the salary.
good.
So
No,
that could help, but
that will help.
it's still not as much as people would like, so. But it's a lot better than it was when I first came in, so. We'll see. Anyway, I'm doing what I can.
Thank you, Taylor. Great.
City zoning's continuing to move forward. There's a public workshop tonight at the high school, tomorrow at Burnley, and Saturday at 11 o'clock, I think it is, at City Space to sort of explain the new various zoning districts. It's a little cryptic what's been issued so far, so.
A lot of pictures, right?
Yeah, we like pictures, but it's a little sparse yet. There's other sections yet to be released, but It's very encouraging.
So, yeah, it's, I'll attend the one on the 25th. If anybody can make it, it would be very enlightening to go and see and listen to what they have to say.
I got one of my staff going this evening, and I'm very eager to hear. We've got at least 2 sites waiting for the outcome to actually start developments.
Anything else on the private sector house, side of that house?
No, it continues. You know, on the single family, we're very busy in the design and construction side of things, which,
I think new construction's picking back up on that, so.
yeah, it seems interesting that, I thought the interest rates would just put the brakes on things, but
There's such a lack of inventory and such a large pool of buyers, and I don't think interest rates really matters at this. I mean, obviously, if it was obscene, then it would matter, but I think at this point, it's more, it's the historical average since 1972, 7.1% on the 30-year mortgage, so we're kind of at normal.
yeah, but people get spoiled for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I think the county's comp plan's moving well too, so.
I'm encouraged, or can't wait to see what they really put out with or get the rest of the developer incentives. I know it's been 2 years. The gentleman that I'm filling in for today has been very vocal about his frustration on that taking 2 years to get developer incentives out. So hopefully that tempo will pick up a little bit on that end of it.
Yeah. Anything else, Brenda?
So I'm gonna just talk about an update on the road shows that we've been doing. So Ned and I have been doing this as a reminder. We're focusing on all the jurisdictions at the moment. We've been to Charlottesville, Albemarle, Nelson, and Greene, right? We're waiting on Fluvanna and Louisa. The last one we did was Nelson, which of all the presentations were great, but Nelson was really exciting. I mean, we had a very open dialogue, back and forth dialogue with the elected officials on the dais, Ned, Ian, and myself. And it was actually really awesome. I think we went for like 45 minutes, that kind of thing. I did, which I have not had a chance to share with Ian, Dale reached out to me with Greene County and wants to invite us back to come back and do a work session format on it where there's a little bit more time. We only had like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, which really isn't enough time to go ahead and do that. So his staff will reach out to you and we'll go ahead and redo a work session. So the basic format is Ian, Ned gives some basic overview. I talk about specific numbers for that jurisdiction on the end of it, and then we open it up for discussion, and the discussion has been rather robust all the way across the board. You want to add a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, in Nelson, it was just a really interesting discussion about, I mean, it seemed like some of the supervisors were really surprised at some of the numbers that Keith was presenting, and actually, I will say that Christine and I, later that week, there's a focus group they were having on housing and economic development for their comp plan update, and they were passing around the presentation that we brought on that Tuesday. So that was pretty cool to see. I mean, not cool because we were sort of saying, okay, the median price of a house in Nelson is $450,000 or whatever, but like, it was cool to see that the information we presented made it to that table, because that was the, steering group for that chapter of the comp plan. And I think they, I mean, yeah, it's a hard conversation to have, because I know that one of the supervisors was just like, well, what do we do about it? And, that's a hard question to answer in 45 minutes, much less, a month, but.
Yeah, I got a little passionate on my soapbox, so
Oh,
they made a mistake.
45 minutes, huh?
Oh, they made a mistake.
So was it about affordable housing development in general, the RHP, all of the above?
The presentation or the questions?
Well, both.
The presentation's about the RHP, right? And the questions were much like Ian said, so what can we do about it? And then I took the opportunity to talk about our 4 pillars, right? It's not this issue wasn't developed in a vacuum, right? And in order to get out of it, it's going to take all these 4 pillars to get out of it and all being part of it. So it was a very robust back and forth conversation. It was what ultimately we hoped we would get to, and the fact that other jurisdictions are inviting us back is great. And then the other thing that we're gonna try to do is expand this roadshow to some for-profits and nonprofits, right? Maybe CAR, maybe Blue Ridge Home Builders Association, or some other nonprofits to kind of reach out to each one of those pillars and talk about what we're doing here and how we do it, and, you know, how it takes everybody to go ahead and make the magic happen. So, yeah, it was, I think from my perspective, it's starting to achieve the goals we're looking to do.
Most excellent, thank you.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's been great.
So any organization that wants that, for us to come from, reach out to Ian, love to sit in front of anybody at UVA on that end of it, but any organization will work it into our agendas and schedules and go ahead and do it. And we tailor the presentation, particularly from the numbers end of it, to the specific body or specific region. Say ocean, or did I say specific? Whatever, to the people we're talking to on that end of it, so it's actually good. Well,
Have you scheduled with Lubanna or Louisa?
we canceled, or we decided, after talking to Moselle, we decided to punt it because it was after 4 very contested public hearings, and I've been doing this long enough to know that you don't want to talk to a body after that, so we're gonna reschedule it. And part of the thing we're trying to do is we're trying to develop there's a tool called HAND. And so it's Virginia, it's gonna be DC or some organization that does it. We're trying to figure out how to do it. It's a great little tool, it's a great little visual, right? Because you can slide on the top from 0 to some dollar amount. And what it does is you slide it over to 1,500, 2,000. It crosses out all the people who cannot afford it. And so that's one of the feedback, particularly from the rural counties, is they don't quite understand that, you know, at a certain dollar point, the person who changes their oil at whatever their gas station that they get can't afford to live in the county any longer. And they don't quite equate that. And this is a really great tool because it goes through job descriptions, right? And as the number goes up, they say, look, they can't afford. And it was very interesting. Jesse Rutherford and Nelson County said, which shocked me, most of their teachers can't afford to live in Nelson County. Forever, the teachers in Fluvanna used to go to live in Nelson County because they could afford in Nelson County, and they would drive to Fluvanna to work. Now, Nelson County's teachers or folks can't afford, police officers, so forth and so on, are going to, what was it, Amelia? I don't know, towards Lynchburg, you know, out from there, so.
Amherst,
thank you.
Yeah, but for Fluvanna, it's also a little challenging only because their board of supervisors dates are the same as Albemarle, their regular meetings. So Louisa, we're gonna hopefully present to they have like an affordable housing subcommittee, and that will allow us to have more time. So I've been talking to Christian Goodwin there to figure out the best time for that. But then, yeah, with Fluvanna, really, it's more of a Ned and Keith's availability, or Ned primarily, but, you know,
It's a hot topic right now for Christian. It's high on his itinerary, so the timing.
I think he's being deliberate about when he wants the presentation to happen, yeah.
Good.
So,
Part of it is me, I really want to have this tool for that presentation.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of our board members that really visually doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And having that tool as part of the presentation.
And Louisa's going through a major transition right now.
Yeah, so Louise would be another one that would be helpful for, to understand the person who's working at the Walmart distribution center actually can't afford to live in Louisa.
Yeah, and they're very aware of that, but yeah, giving them some more tools that they can demonstrate to the rest of the board would be very helpful.
So that is all I had. I think that's the last agenda item. If there isn't any objections, we can adjourn a little early. Everybody good with that? Sounds good. Look at that, we just adjourned.
That's all right.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.